Hey Blip Sounds, it's Brian Seeley and welcome to the 2020 Monthly Sound Design Challenge. Each month, we will provide a video for you to practice doing a sound redesign. We will also include interesting challenges for you to try. We will also include breakdown videos from myself and others showing how we tackled the challenge. For January, our challenge will be to redesign the Ryze Realm Warp from League of Legends using the 3 sound files that we provide. These sound files contain random squeaks that I recorded over the last year. You are free to use one or all of the files. You just cannot use any other files or sounds. This month, the sound designers joining me will be Ryan Stunkel and Austin Mullen. If you want to join the challenge, head on over to blipsounds.com/competition where you can download the video and the files. The challenge will run from the first Friday of the month to the last Friday of the month, ending at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Upload your videos to Twitter using the hashtag BlipSoundsComp and tagging @BlipSounds. At the end of the month, we will do a live stream where we will listen to and review the submissions and then randomly select a winner. The winner will receive a free month of our game audio training series. To learn more about the game audio training series, be sure to head on over to blipsounds.com. Now, without further ado, on to our first breakdown video.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan. How's it going? Today I'm going to be showing you guys how I did my Ryze Realm Warp sound effect for the monthly January challenge. Thanks again, Brian, for having us and joining in on the fun. You gave us a lot of really difficult source recordings, but I think that I was able to make a pretty good sound out of it. So here is the sound that I created. Source recordings were really hard to work with. So what I decided to do is I take a source recording like this, and then I move it onto this track here that had a distortion effect on it. But that helped me fill out the frequency spectrum quite a bit in the recording. That's probably the basis of most of the sounds. It creates a time and space ripping effect. And one of my goals with this sound was to be as attentive to details as possible. Even just looking at the animation, there's so many small things going on. There's like the beam of light that shines in from above him. There's these little runes that are lighting up. And then the teleport, and then like the final explosion of the teleport. There's a lot going on. The first thing that stuck out to me were these runes that were lighting up. The one really good thing about these sounds that were provided were that they were squeaking sounds, so there was a lot of pitch variation. I kind of utilized that in this sound here. And I cut out the 500 range just to kind of give it a floaty feel. And then I also added a delay. Then also just cutting out the high frequencies here. More delays, more echoes on all of this. And then this sound is really cool. That was just a really low impact. I just lowered the pitch a little bit. I decided to cut out the 500 range, add a little bit of a delay. Pitch shifter, I only did an automation, so I just kind of lowered the pitch over time. And then boost the lows a lot. Added a compressor and a limiter just to kind of keep it intact and also make it more powerful. So that helped a lot. And then just another one for the ending. You can separate the sound into a few different parts. We have the start of the sound where he initiates a teleport, and then there's like a weird second section in the sound. It's hard to really see, but right now, like right when that portal opens up, then when the portal closes, and then when the portal opens back up when he finishes the teleport. I did 2 cool things here. Yeah, so this was actually, I'm really proud of this. You can see that I changed the low pass right here in the automation. And you can see in the animation, like right when that lightning streak the light streak from the top comes through, I opened up the higher frequencies even more to kind of build that satisfaction a little bit more. You can see it happen live in the animation. And it just opens up the entire sound a little bit more. Another thing that I added, this little bit of sound. I'm so happy with how that turned out. This in particular. This here is just the lightning striking down. And then this sound here is the rebuild up of the sound itself. And this is cool because this is just a sound that exists up until that light comes down. But as soon as the portal starts to open up and the light comes down, a moment of chaos into a moment of clarity, and then comes back to life in the final teleport sound. I did some automation here for the EQ on the high shelf to kind of emphasize the higher frequencies over time. I also did a lot of automation for pitch shifting. Whereas if I were to cut this out, this is kind of just what it sounds like. I think I just stretched out a sample of one of the squeaks, and it creates a cool musical tone as a result. I really liked the low frequencies in the sound. I think if I used anything too high-pitched, it would kind of overwhelm the sound, which is why I only kept it to these sounds here. I would take a random bit from one of these squeaking sounds, cut it, and then move it down onto one of these two distortion tracks, and then I'd just try throwing it into a random spot to see what would happen and how it would sound. I knew that for a fact I was going to use a sort of musical tone here for the sounds building up over time, but for the most part it's just like, okay, start of the sound, big impact, build up over time, and then have a little bit of a quiet bit, and then end with a big bang. But for the most part, I really just distorted the crap out of all of these sounds and just utilized those in the recordings. And the noise from the distortion really did a good job of just filling out the frequency spectrum a lot more. That's kind of the overall structure of the sound. This sweeping resonant low pass filter is one of my favorite effects. And what it does is it just takes a low pass and it just raises and lowers it really fast automatically. With all the moving parts of the portal, recreating that swirling effect helps the emphasis of movement, I guess. So if something's constantly moving, using that sweeping resonant low pass filter, it's very useful. All these are free plugins I used, by the way. The most important part of the sound was definitely the low end. Just does so much for the sound. You can hear how much it just fills out the sound when I add it in. And I think one of the tricks here is having a definable pitch for the bass. I feel like sounds that don't have a lot of movement and are too static, it just stands out a little bit too much. But if you're changing the pitch, then you're able to control it and help it move towards something instead of having it just be some random sound. The only exception to this in this sound, of course, is these musical elements. All that I did is I just changed the pitch, and then I just figured out the distance and semitones to create a chord here. And that's basically it. I think if I were to change anything, I'd probably add a little bit more high frequency content in the sound here. Otherwise, I think it's all pretty good.
Hi, I'm Austin, and here is the finished sound. The first effect that I built was the bed layer here. So in order to do that, I actually took a small snippet of the background noise, and then I ran it through EOS, so now it sounds like this. But what's really cool about EOS is it has an infinite mode so that it can reverberate forever and not have any decay time. So when infinite, it sounds like that. So that was my bass layer, which is the low here, so by itself. And I also blended a high layer, but this one had a piano key playing in the background. And with the reverb, and it only comes up for this little peak here, so put together, they sound like this. And that is where the effects come in. So if you're unfamiliar with Trash, it's a plugin by Isotope that is a whole channel strip of distortion and amp simulation. I took off a lot of the high end because it had too much static in it, and it also has the low pass filter oscillating between these two positions. So with the high end and without, some distortion. And next I ran it through the Convolve module, and essentially It's an amp simulation, except a lot of the impulse responses are not from amplifiers. They're just from like random sources. So I liked where that was going, but I really like to pitch things down, especially with pitch delay. So I've set a relatively high delay time compared to how I usually do. It's pitching down an octave and a little bit more. But what it's missing is any real movement. So if we watch that with just this video, it doesn't move like the animation moves. So I added a chorus here, and there's a lot of automation that I used. So this automation lane here is changing the delay live in order to use the delay as a pitch shifter. And here I'm automating the mix to come up when the spell starts to cast, to rise, and then near the end, cut the mix back out. So let's hear that. I added in another lane of pitch automation to fall and rise where the chorus mix was. After that, I added in a tremolo. As the pitch is falling, the depth of the tremolo is increasing until it maxes out, and the frequency starts low, increases, keeps relatively steady, and then it more or less follows the same as the pitch envelope. And lastly, I added in neutron, and I'm just using it as an equalizer to tame out some of the more extreme parts that I did not care for. I was really happy with all of the mid-low frequencies, but there wasn't really anything in the high end. So I found some parts of the squeaky gate, cut out all the low frequencies. Right after that, I'm putting it through pitch delay, and I'm putting it through a stereo delay with a filter modulating as a high pass, since the low end and mid range are very, very full already at this point. With our riser, I actually considered that being close to my final draft, but when Ryze appears, there's not really any build to him showing up. And so I found that little squeak, but when I added in pitch delay, pitching up an octave instead of down an octave, throw in some tremolo at full depth instead of only having a partial stutter. And after that, I threw in a ring modulator. It wasn't cutting through the mix very well, and so adding the ring mod with a wave shaper attached helped it be much more apparent. I just felt like it gave Ryze himself more presence as he's coming out of the other end of the teleport. So the last thing we have to look at is the master effects. So I have my reverb first, and I only have it coming in at all at the very end part. If I had the reverb on the whole time, it sounded like he was indoors to me. I have two compressors here. This one is just for glue, so to glue all of the effects together so that they sound like they're in a similar dynamic range. And then this compressor is only working on the low end. Next, I added the Berserk distortion. I liked the tone that it gave, but it's pretty extreme most of the time. So I have the drive all the way down and only halfway on the mix. And width. Adding an instance of trash to the master. The only thing I'm using here is some light tape saturation.
Welcome to my breakdown of the Ryze Realm Warp. So when I first got the video, it has no sound in it, and on the one hand, it's really exciting because I get to create whatever I want. On the other hand, I have nothing to work off of. In this case, it really is just all visual. What do I want it to sound like? And I did some iterations on it, and I tried to focus more on an ethereal aspect of it, where there were all these like soft fade-in sounds. And something that I tried in the very beginning was using iZotope's Iris 2, which is a resampling plugin. So I dropped in one of the throne squeaks, and then I carved out some EQ frequencies. Its normal pitch was on B3. but I played it just a little over an octave down on the A2. And I just set it to the length of the video just to see what would happen. So I tried using that as a foundation, and I was going for something that felt, like I said, a bit more ethereal. And I shared it with Ryan and others, and the feedback that I got back was it feels too slow. And it made sense because this is League of Legends. It's a MOBA game, and it's extremely fast-paced. It's high intensity from the moment the match starts all the way to the end of the match. And when I started to think about it like that, I started to realize this sound needs to be quick. It needs to feel frenetic. It needs to feel like everything is happening right now. So I migrated away from that idea, and this is what I came up with. So just a quick little breakdown. I believe in putting in markers. If you don't already put in markers on your session, I highly recommend that you do that. Markers help you to keep everything organized, know where things start and end, and helps you to know what sounds you still need to create. In Reaper, like a lot of other DAWs, you can set up folders, and so you can keep everything contained together. I also like to color my tracks. It just helps me visually keep everything together. So first thing I want to dive into is the warp sound, and this is what kicks the sound off. And I really wanted that intense attack right away. So I use these kind of explosion sounds. So these were created using the second Throne Squeak file. There's like some hand sounds on the mic where I was adjusting things. And so I took those, cut them up, dropped them in here, put them under heavy limiting. I also low passed and high passed each of them separately, as well as, messed around with slowing them down. On this one, I used a bit crusher. This Tau bit crusher is available for free on their website. Then I run it through a folder using the reverb as well as the Berserker distortion. And what I like about the Berserker distortion, under the dynamic setting, you can kind of choose at what point the sound gets affected by the Berserker plugin. By dialing this threshold, it's for the most part ignoring the transient and then picking up all of this reverb and creating a sort of like explosion sound. And then for the shimmer, so I took again from the second Throne file, there's a point where you hear some guitar playing in the background. So I took that one little clip, I slowed it down by half its speed, and then put some reverb on it, and then I used the Isotope DDLY dynamic delay. And on the dynamic delay, I used the bottom channel, and under G, it doesn't just do a delay, it also does some pitching to it. And what I did is I pushed it under 100% feedback when I hit play, and it created this. So I just let that record for a long time, and then found an interesting sound that I liked with this shimmer, and I just pulled this one part, put a little bit of reverb on it, and then Berserker distortion again, and got this. And then I just played it backwards, and I put some tremolo on it, and I automated the tremolo settings. So together you have the portal sound, again, another explosion, limiting the crap out of it, reverb, and then the Berserker distortion. Same thing here like I did with the shimmer. I recorded this output, and then I reversed it. And I wanted that blast to feel like a violent event. You know, I imagine that when you're creating a portal, you're ripping something open, and I wanted to create that intensity. And then for the portal sound itself, I took one of the squeaks and slowed it down, but I also lowered the pitch as well and reversed it. Kind of sounds a little bit like a cello. And then for our plugins, I have a sweeping EQ, some more distortion from the MDMX overdrive, all of that together. And then lastly, I took one of the squeaks from the Dr. Office squeaking sound and chopped it up so that all of the squeaks and all of the sounds were right next to each other. And then I reversed it and sped it up by 6 times its rate. And then the Renaissance axe, you probably see these little blocks on here. Reaper comes with spectral editing, and so what I did was I edited out a lot of these squeaks. So I didn't want it to be harsh like that, and you're left with this. That's the quick down and dirty for how I recreated this sound. I used a lot of distortion in here because these are just random squeaks and they really don't have anything to do with the game. If you have any questions about this month's challenge, feel free to jump in to our Discord channel and ask away. I hope my video and the other videos gave you some inspiration for what to do next.